when disaster strikes, your first responders are not coming to your block to help you. And that drive was beyond treacherous. It was so scary, and there were downed trees. They weren't just my neighbors, they're my friends. And then January 7th hit.
I would like to introduce our guest today, Natalie, who is a resident of Altadena.
I am.
Natalie was affected by the Eaton Fire. Thank you, Natalie, for being with us today and sharing your experience. Can you share a little bit about your life before the fire?
Wow. I'm a native Californian, born and raised in the Los Angeles area. I went to high school, LAUSD, went to UC Irvine, where I majored in French literature and civilization. Not practical when it came time to looking for a job. Did my junior year abroad. I graduated from college and had some, iffy jobs, whatever, this and that, and ended up moving to Mexico. And I lived in Mexico for almost 20 years. My children were born there, and that's a whole nother phase of my life. I do speak fluent Spanish after living there, and I came back to the States in 94 with my kids. I left my husband there in Mexico City and moved back to the Pasadena area. And I was very blessed to get a job in 1995 with the U.S. Small Business Administration, where I worked for 25 years and retired in 2020. Right in the middle of the pandemic. It was my life in Altadena, wonderful neighbors. I live on a little cul-de-sac with 17 people. They weren't just my neighbors, they're my friends. And then January 7th hit.
So tell me about January 7th and your experience, the fire.
Well, interestingly enough, so I celebrate Mexican culture, of course. And the night before the fire on January 6th, I had a party at my house with all my neighbors, as fate would have it. We hadn't gotten together like that in years. And we had a lovely evening together, and it had been windy, and it was windy on the 7th and kind of scary. I remember calling my neighbor saying the winds are strong, and we had a wooden fence between my house and the house to the north. And I called him and said, you've got to pull this down because it could blow and break something. So he came and pulled down some of the wooden fence, and the winds were getting stronger and stronger. And I remember as the evening came along, it started to get dark, the winds were strong, and then the power went out. And I had CERT training, the Community Emergency Response Team, and I knew the reality. And the reality is that when disaster strikes, your first responders are not coming to your block to help you. You and your people on your block need to band together, and that's really what happened. So I ended up knocking on people's doors, telling them you better leave. There are a couple of people that were in bed or taking naps. I said, it's time to go. Mm-hmm. And I ended up packing up a go bag and going to my sister's house in Arcadia. And I remember there's no electricity, there's no traffic lights, and the wind's blowing fiercely. And that drive was beyond treacherous. It was so scary, and there were downed trees. And again, I remember I went down Fair Oaks to Huntington Drive to go out to Arcadia. And it was so scary because It was just black. You didn't even know where the intersections were because it was so dark.
The lights were not working. No traffic lights.
No traffic lights, no street lights, no nothing. And not a lot of people on the streets. So I went to my sister's house, and her electricity was out too. We just spent the night there and ended up going the next day to my daughter's house out in Rancho Cucamonga. Now on the 9th, my daughter and I did come back, and that's a whole nother thing. It was very interesting.
How was your home affected by the fire?
On my block, there are 17 homes on the cul-de-sac. And on the other side of the street, across from me, only one home survived. On my side of the street, the house next door was the only one that burned down. Wow. Now, the only reason my home didn't burn down was because of my next door neighbor to the south, Reuben. I call him Reuben the fire marshal. And Reuben stayed behind. He never left. And he and then his son and then some other neighbors got together, and they started off with the hose until the water ran out. Then I found empty coffee mate containers in the front yard and empty chicken broth containers. They used anything liquid they had in the pantry. Then there were divots in the yard. They were using dirt. Then, great discovery that saved us all, someone found a swimming pool in the block behind us from a home that had burned down. Someone had a sump pump and a generator, and they pumped water from the pool into trash barrels in the middle of the sink. And the guys would run little walkthroughs like every 10 minutes, and different people would take the walks and put out smoldering fires. Because the picture of my house on January 8th showed a smoldering front yard. And that was from all of the mulch in the front yard, because that was smoldering. Yeah. But I mean, the fact that my home didn't burn down was only because Reuben knew that if my home burned, his home would burn. And that's how those, I think, were 5 houses from my house to the end of the block are still standing. It's the only reason.
That's such a heroic neighbor that you have.
Heroic. And I fear for him, too. Being in there and being in that smoke, I mean, it was awful when my daughter and I would go up, and then every time I'd go to the house until remediation was more or less done, we'd wear the full-on hazmat suit and the P100 mask and the gloves and the booties and the whole 9 yards, because it was scary and it was gross. But yeah, he stayed there and he saw it all. He saw the houses go up. The day we came on the 9th, they still had open gas lines that were on fire that the gas company hadn't gotten to, because these guys went around and turned off the gas in the neighborhood where they could. But the couple homes, my home was built in 1938, so they're older homes. Mm-hmm. And I guess they couldn't turn off the gas. But, he saved our houses. Thank you, Ruben. What
were some of the hardest parts in the days that followed after the fire?
It was the not knowing. I mean, we had no idea what all of this implied. At the beginning, I was thinking, I'll be home by the 4th of July. No problem. And then it kept pushing out because I had no idea how to deal with insurance. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what remediation was. Didn't know what they were going to have to do. Didn't know what testing involved. And every time I'd get a question answered, there'd be more questions to ask. And it was overwhelming. What do I do with my things? And I remember in my head thinking, I don't want my sofa. I don't want my bed. What about my clothes? What about my books? We just didn't know. And the reality is, too, that I've learned over time is that although you think there are really just two pools, people with homes that burned, mm-hmm. people with homes still standing, but it's not true, because even with the home still standing, the damage can vary incredibly. And with my home, insurance declared everything inside my home a total loss.
Wow.
So what that means is that the whole inventory process sucks so bad, but I never did the inventory myself. They sent a company over who went through everything I owned. And basically, they had cameras, they had microphones, they were going boom, 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 and listing, this, that, a mat, all the stuff I had in my home. They took out the stuff that could be cleaned. My dishes, my any glassware, any metal stuff, all of that stuff could be cleaned. But a dresser that had a pressed wood backing to it was considered gone because of the pressed wood. Mm-hmm. And so much furniture, at least IKEA type furniture and the less expensive furniture, all has that pressed wood stuff in it. Uh-huh. And I had no problem with them tossing it. Just get rid of it. I lost all my books because you can't really clean books. And that hurt me, and I didn't want to think about it too much. I said, just get rid of it. I'll figure it out.
And the memories that you lost along with that, right? The pictures.
I will say that there are still boxes of pictures in the garage, and I'll probably end up getting them scanned and getting rid of them. I did that with my mom's photos. And there's the little things. I'm thinking, I got rid of that. But, it is stuff. And to be honest, we had too much stuff. They helped me clean my garage at one point. They were cleaning out my garage, and there was this bag, like a shopping bag from Mexico. And they said, what's in here? And I looked in and I said, oh, those are awards from work. Toss them. That was easy. I should have gotten rid of that years ago. So I kind of figure in a way they did me a favor with some of the stuff.
I mean, are you back in your home yet?
Oh, heavens no. Nowhere near back in my home. My home looks like it's ready to sell. It's completely empty. There's nothing in my house right now. I think there's a TV they haven't gotten rid of. There's stuff in the garage. Remediation is at a stage where they did the initial remediation. There's some questions. But we've determined with the flooring that they're going to have to encapsulate the floors from underneath and resand and refinish the floors with special polyurethane oil-based. That's a story. Then the electrical, going to have to replace the electric panel and all of the switches and all the outlets. And then with, what was the other one? HVAC. Going to have to replace the furnace, the air conditioning unit, all the ductwork. And then there's questions about the cabinets and the countertops, because according to my remediation guy, when the soot and the ash stays too long. Remediation didn't start until August because of the back and forth with insurance. Uh-huh. We have to test. And then at one point they're saying we have to test again for lead. And we said, no, you've tested for lead. There's lead. What difference does another lead test do? Let's just start cleaning it. Well, because so much time passed from January to August, that soot and ash can literally bind to things like the granite countertop and the cabinets, which we're still not sure. It looks like there's some stuff they can't get out. Not sure what's going to happen there. But all the appliances have to go. Refrigerator, built-ins, dishwasher, stove, microwave, vent, all that stuff. Goodbye, washer, dryer. Mm-hmm.
What has been your experience working with the insurance company and the adjusters and all?
I'll have to say that I've only had one adjuster, and I'm an exception to the rule. And I understand that. She's been very good about what needs to be done so far, and I haven't been overwhelming her with requests. Because I fully understand that between any of the contractors, insurance, any of these people involved in this process, they're overwhelmed, just like we are. There's so much work. And I understand from my remediator that when you want to get additional work done, you have to be very specific and detailed in your request to insurance. You can't go to insurance and say, you have to replace all of this. Okay, we did the first stage of cleaning. Now what are we going to do with the appliances? And what about these 3 systems we just talked about? She's been reasonable. I've been getting my additional or alternate living expenses, my ALE expenses paid well. She gave me, for instance, there's an estimate given for doing my landscaping in the front yard. It's ridiculous. I'm not even talking about landscaping until I move home again.
It's good to hear. I mean, you had a positive experience working with your adjuster. I mean, a lot of people, you get to hear, horror stories working with insurance and with the adjusters. So it's always good to hear the positive side of things too, right?
It is. But it's so confusing because there's so many different points of view. When you talk about landscaping, for instance. So either do you take out 6 inches of topsoil across the yard, test and test and test. I don't even know what you do about that. And there's still questions. I washed my clothes. Was that safe? I sure hope so. But the experience so far has been okay.
We always talk about community involvement and community support and things like that. What support made the biggest difference for you after the fire?
I think that being with fellow Altadenans just fills my soul with hope and love. It's just so beautiful. And I almost come to tears just thinking about it because no one understands more than we do. And that's something that's going to unite that community that's lived there forever. And there's something about it. Where are you from? Altadena. Oh, and the first question, my house is still standing, my house burned. That's the first thing that we can say to each other because there's something about people from the outside that, we've grouped together as a community. That Disaster Resource Center was so helpful. There are all these different agencies that got together and responded. I told you I worked for the SBA for 25 years, and I used to sit on panels and talk about our programs and services, and one of them is disaster services. I never thought I'd get an SBA disaster loan, and there I was. Whenever I see my SBA people, I call them out and say hello to them, but I got an SBA loan. Never thought that would happen. So there was that. I can say that working with the village, I'm a member of the village, and they've helped me with financially and getting the air purifier and with some items. I had a wish list, and that was lovely. Another huge surprise. And I went to the Disaster Resource Center and spoke with these folks from the Buddhist, I forget the name of the specific organization, and I thought, I wonder what they have to offer. They said, we have a gift card for you. Just sign up here and we'll contact you. When I went to visit their offices in Monte, there were all these people. It was just this loving embrace from these people. And they gave me a $1,000 gift card. Never did I expect that.
Yeah, wow.
In general, and people and friends would send me gift cards, and here you go. And the gift card sat for 10 months because I was living with my daughter, didn't have to spend them. But now, it's very telling when I make my first trip I made my first trip to the grocery store, and I had to buy salt and pepper. Kind of tells you where we start from.
What did it mean for you to get that kind of support from Altadena Village and other, community resources? What did it really mean for you?
It just means the world that the people care and they're helping in a tangible way and beyond thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers are cute, but people need help. And I realize that I'm in a very great position as far as a lot of people go. My insurance is decent. I will confess, I know that if my home had burned down, I would have been underinsured to have to rebuild. I would not have been a good.
Were you underinsured?
Well, no. I have enough for my situation. But
a lot of people were underinsured.
Boy, there should be some workshops out in the community talking to people about insurance and what the coverage means and understanding your policy. I understand it like I never did before. You need to understand those kind of things inside out. I'd say that when I talk to small business owners back in the day. You have to understand your financials. You have to understand how this insurance process works. And it's still a little murky for most of us.
When one of my friend, his in-laws, when they bought the homes, I think in the 60s, and the insurance value had not kept up with it. I think he had insurance for only about $300,000 or something like that. But the home is worth probably about $1 or $2 million. A lot of people like that were very underinsured.
We don't keep up, and that's something. I think that's something you probably should revisit with your agent every year. Hey, how are things looking? Is my coverage sufficient? I'm almost afraid to ask my agent now because who knows what it's going to cost, but it's something you have to think about. I tend to be overinsured. I'm one of those people with long-term care insurance and personal liability insurance and all this kind of stuff because we need it. But a lot of people don't realize it, or they're afraid of the expense, and maybe we have to adjust how we spend because it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up something very close to my heart about the long-term care insurance. I speak about this topic, even though I don't sell the insurance, but I talk about the importance of having the long-term care insurance. Likewise, other insurance to not just have it, but to keep up with it. I mean, that's the important component. And you're absolutely right about the community education that we have to do to educate everyone about why it is important to keep up. Because when disaster strikes, it comes with no warning.
You know, and another thing that's dear to my heart, and I would love to find someplace I could contribute, is the whole idea of financial literacy. You know, that's even beyond, don't talk about regular literacy. That's a whole nother subject. But people have no idea how to manage money. No idea what it means to be responsible and have what you need to fall back on in case something happens. The idea of long-term care insurance, people say it's so expensive. Okay, yeah, it is. Let's talk about how a friend of mine has her husband in a facility. It's a home with 5 people, okay? He has his own room and all his meals and everything. And it's costing $8,000 a month. And that's just a private room in somebody's home. One of these facilities is going to cost you $13,000, $15,000 a month. Where are you going to get that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is very important. Not many people understand it. I get calls from a lot of people when they're at that age and they want care, and they were thinking that Medicare is going to pay for all that. And I'm the bearer of the bad news at that point, saying that I'm so sorry, Medicare is not going to pay for you for that unless you have a long-term care insurance, which will pay for it. So yes, that financial literacy part of it, I think I'm going to bring you back on another program where we can actually talk in depth about that. Happy
to, because really and truly, people have no idea how much money they make, how much they should set aside for taxes. Nobody should be surprised by a tax bill at the end of the year. You know, it just, all these things you have to think about. And home ownership's expensive.
It is.
But you have to prepare for it and think about it. And it's life. It's adulting, as my daughter would say.
What would you want others to understand about the experience that you went through with the Eaton Fire and everything that happened after that?
Okay, I'm going to talk first about the go bag, because I've done this in the CERT training. But your go bag, people talk about what you put in your go bag, and that's really cool, but you're not going to have all this stuff. I'm not going to have my passport sitting in some bag to grab, but what you have to have is have some things in your go bag, or at the very least, you have your go bag with a piece of paper on it with what you need to grab. I grabbed my passport, and I grabbed, in my computer and all my iPad and that kind of stuff, my backup drive and certain basic things, but you don't think about that. I happen to have been living in Mexico City when they had the 1985 earthquake, and people would leave their homes.
That is a big one, right?
Huge, 8.1. People would leave their homes with their Christmas lights in their hand because you're in shock. And when we left our homes on January 7th, none of us thought that we wouldn't be able to come back home for, I'm looking at 10 months now. So have your go bag ready to go, but have a list of what goes in that go bag. That's number one. The other thing is get up to date and figure out what insurance is. And understand insurance. Understand how the process works. Because the people would go in the next day and start cleaning their home. You don't touch a thing in your home. You leave it as it is. That's insurance's job. So don't get all crazy, I have to clean, or I'm going to take stuff out. Let insurance do their job. File your claim immediately. I had a friend who filed his claim from the bridge going from Woodbury, or whatever this extension is, over to the Rose Bowl, as he took a picture of the black cloud over Altadena and figured, my home's gone. And he was the first claim that was filed because he saw and he knew. So file your claim right away and take care of yourself too. Now, in our case, going up to the house, I put on it's hot and miserable putting on that full hazmat suit, but have your protective gear. Have that kind of stuff. It's helpful. And just be careful. Take care of yourself.
And one of the things that has been going on in our meeting circles is take an inventory of everything that you in your home. Just take your phone, go around from room to room to room, take pictures of everything that you have, because when you're going to present your claim to the insurance company,
right,
this will validate what you are claiming for.
Yes. And organizing the receipts for your big stuff. And was very useful for me is I order a lot of stuff on Amazon. You can go back to your orders forever on Amazon and all your receipts are there, which is very helpful. I was lucky in that I had remodeled in 2021. So I knew exactly where all of my big appliances came from. So that was helpful as well. Yeah. You have to know what you own. And if you have Valuables, if you own, okay, nobody here owns furs, but you have expensive jewelry or expensive collections of something, that's a special rider on your insurance policy. The insurance is not going to cover above, I think, $1,000 in jewelry or something. And if you have a lot of expensive jewelry, it's going to bypass that. So you have to make sure that you're adequately covered.
I think that's a key thing, adequately covered, and also keep up with your insurance. I mean, that's very important.
Right. Auto pay. I'm all about auto pay. And in Southern California, people don't know about the Earthquake Bolt program, which is a fabulous program.
It is. I did that for my home.
And you pay I think you get a rebate of God knows how much when it costs you next to nothing. And they bolt your little house to the foundation in a way that it was not bolted before. And listen, I've been through the earthquake. I don't want to do that again. But yeah.
Natalie, thank you so much for the time you spent with us. Sharing stories like this is so authentic because you lived through it. And, anybody who is listening to this show, they'll be able to understand what it means to go through a traumatic experience like the one you had, how to prepare for it, and what to do afterwards after something happened. So thank you so much. This is so valuable what you're sharing.
I want to throw in one more thing. See a therapist. It's helpful. It's such a loss, and it's nothing abnormal to talk to somebody when you're feeling upset, but I think seeing a therapist has helped a lot too. But I had to throw that PS in.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. Thanks.